All right, DP1 and 2, this assignment is for you. This tutorial is to teach you how to use the Slow Camera app. You're going to download it from your App Store or your Android store, and it should be free. If there's a paid version of it, feel free to get it if you want to, but you do not have to. These are really, really simple, slow shutter speed apps. There's nothing complicated to them, so you don't need to pay for one. Okay, so we're going to click on the app. And I wanted to teach you how to use these tools down at the bottom here. So right now we've got this little eyeball. Click on the eyeball. This tells you all your settings, okay? So basically this is a slow shutter speed app. So your shutter speed, to remind you, is the little window that opens and closes in your camera that lets light in. And the speed of that open and shut is really important, because if it's open for a long time, it lets more light in, and if it's open and shut really quickly, it lets less light in. So we can control that. When we have a slow shutter, we can paint with light, which means that we can put our camera on a light source and move our camera and create a line of light that often has a texture and an interesting pattern. So you guys are going to learn how to use this so that you can experiment with it when we create our abstract photography images. So you can put it in auto setting, manual, or light trail. I'd like you to set it to light trail, because that setting gives it a nice sort of like a mirrored image, and I'll show you what that will look like in a second. It really is the prettiest, and it gives you the best effects. And then I'd like you to set all of these other things down to 0. So put the toggle down there. It's got your shutter speed, so this is a half a second, 1 second, all the way up to 15. And then this bulb setting here, the B stands for bulb, and that means that you can leave your shutter open for as long as you want when it's on this setting. You just have to tell your camera when to open it and when to close it. And you have the same setting on your Nikon cameras, except you have to hold the shutter down the entire time that you're taking your photo, which is a little bit difficult. And then your zoom in speed, this is, it actually zooms in to your image at different speeds there. And then this is focus, so you can have a really slow focus, or you can have a really fast focus. You can see it kind of getting sharp real quick. So you can put that down to 0 for now. And then the sensitivity is kind of like 1 second is crisp, and then 1/64th of a second is, actually that's the opposite. 1 second is really blurry, and then 1/64th of a second is fast, so it's crisp. Okay, so to get rid of these tools, you want to hit the eyeball, and that goes away. If you hit the gears on the right, you're going to get a timer, so you can use the timer if you want to. I don't know what the screen shutter is, so you might need to experiment with that. You definitely need to click on auto save. It's going to save automatically to your camera roll. If you don't have this on, it stops you every time you take a photo and you have to save it. You have to tell it where to save, and it's just frustrating. So I'm going to hit the gears one more time, make that go away. And now we're going to experiment in a really controlled way. So you can just use a dark room and a light source in your room, or you can just use, if you have one light source on in the room, there's a lot of reflections of light going on, so you can do that. So I'd like you to start with everything down to the left. Start with half a second. So you're going to take the photo at a half second, and you're going to do the same motion every time. So that was a half a second. Switch it to 1 second. Do the same motion so you can kind of see. You can see what the light trails are doing when you drag it. It kind of repeats and creates a little bit of a snake. Now I'm up to 4 seconds. I want you to notice that this is the inside of my jacket, is thermo jacket, and it's got reflective surface on it, and that makes a really interesting light pattern as I drag my light and my camera across the space. So now as we get up into more seconds, we have an opportunity to control the painting. So I'm going to put it on B for bulb. And I'm going to put it on B for bulb. I'm just double checking that I'm actually recording here. Yep, okay. So B for bulb means that I have to hit the picture button, and then I can leave this on for as long as I want, which means I can actually control my painting. So I can stop it whenever I want to. I mean, I could completely wipe it out with white if I wanted to and then stop it. Or I can just do a little bit of painting and then stop it. Or I could go really slow, controlled, and then stop it. You have a lot of control there. So that's your shutter speed. So now let's mess around with the zoom in speed. So 0.01, we're going to see what it does. It's so fast. So let's jump up to 0.1 and see what it does. See how it zooms in? And then 0.5. So that's kind of cool. So mess around with that. And then try your sensitivity settings too. I'm going to put my shutter to 2 and then maybe my zoom in speed to 0.05, kind of in the middle. And then we'll do half a second. And then we'll try an 1/8. And then we'll try 1/64. And you can see that's just kind of like quick and jumpy. So you can experiment with those and figure out what they all mean. And then your autofocus again is, right now it focuses really slow when I move. It kind of like blurs and then it focuses. That's going to affect your picture. And then when we bump it way up to the other one, the other side, it just focuses immediately. So that's cool. So play around with those things. So now I wanted to show you, I want you to go back into your camera roll and look at all these pictures and compare. Okay, so up here we had a slower shutter, and then we get faster and faster. I'm sorry, the opposite. Fast shutter is the first one, and then as we get slower and slower, we can paint more with light, and we have more light movement. Let me show you one more thing with this. You don't need a really bright light source. If you wanted to just have the reflective stuff in your room, you could actually paint with that. So let's set it to bulb so we have control. Maybe those in the middle. Okay, so you can see that I can control how I paint my image here. It's really zooming in. I don't like that. So I'm going to go back to that. Maybe that. So if you learn what these tools do, you can control them better. So right now I'm starting the picture and then I'm stopping it whenever I want. Like I can start and stop really quick. If I wanted that mug to go all the way up or like faster, I can do that. And I can experiment with all of those things. So let's look at some of these images. They're really kind of cool. They're really trippy. So you really can do anything you want. You don't need a fancy fairy lights and anything. You just have to have a light source and reflection in this app. You have to kind of think about it sort of as an abstract painter. Instead of saying, well, that's my mug, you know, you're looking at it differently. That one's cool. So now what I want you to do is go to Schoology and figure out what you're supposed to do for this assignment. But I do want to show you one more thing. You have Snapseed, you've learned how to use it, your double exposure. So we're going to go into Snapseed, and what I'd like you to do first is open up an image, maybe of yourself or family or something. This is a picture of me in my Halloween costume, my witch hat. I'm going to go find it again. I'm going to find the original. There we go. Okay. And then you can experiment with it a little bit. First, you can kind of give it some grit or grain first if you want. And then you go to Tools and Double Exposure. And then I want you to put plus sign there, put one of your painted light images in there on top of your photo. Just one that you think might be interesting, and then you can use your finger pinch to expand or contract it. Put it where you want it. Really play around with it. And this is where you can start to have a lot of control. You can intentionally paint on a photo. You just have to have the photo and then a double image of it. And then of course you want to save your work. And that's it for this demo. Make sure to go onto Schoology and find out what your actual assignment is.